So my name is Peter Szegedi. I'm with GÉANT, which is the European Research and Education Networking Association, if you don't know the name. First of all, I have to apologize. I'm sick. I was sick in the last 2 days, so I couldn't attend the sessions yesterday and the day before. I apologize for that. I'm trying to do my best to deliver this session for you. I'm using this mic, so you should not use this mic after me. Probably I can pass the mobile thing around. So this session is about Open Cloud Mesh, and I was here since the morning of this day, so I heard a lot about Open Cloud Mesh already. So this is kind of introduction recap for yourself, and also for me, to remember what we did. So Open Cloud Mesh was an idea coming from a couple of people working for a company at that time. It was called OnCloud, and they said we should try and create an interconnected private clouds for research and education, right? And at that point they thought from the very beginning that this should be an open and vendor neutral approach to a problem. And the problem actually was quite specific. It was not the usual problem that you might think, that the users want to pick the actual backend where they want to store the data. All of your solutions, OnCloud, Nextcloud, PGO, cFile, and the others have this feature, right? You can put different backends behind that. So we have that use case, and we know the solutions for that. We often have another use case which is about federated access, right? When you are a service provider, you want to give access to users, so you connect your service to national federations, and via EduGain, which is our interfederation system, you can actually allow third-party users from other IDPs to come and access your service. That's another valid use case. We are not addressing that either. What we are addressing is the actual situation where, and I go back for a second, where you have separate administrative domains. So each and every domain has their own user. The users want to use that service. They want to use that application. Maybe it's localized in language and in branding. They want to pick their own backend behind it, of course, but still they want to collaborate with other users using different administrative domains or different server locations. So that's the area, that's the use case that we define, and we try to find a solution to, and that's what we call the Open Cloud Mesh. So how we started, it started at the around the summer 15, right? That's we call the first phase of Open Cloud Mesh. We created this small project under the umbrella of the GÉANT Association as a neutral place where we collect mostly national research and education networks and universities together. And we kicked off this project in the fall of 15. And at that time, we realized this Open Cloud Mesh was actually an OnCloud Mesh, right? So it was only a protocol initiated and implemented by OnCloud, and we wanted to understand whether it's going to work or not. We had a use case, and I highlighted the use case in red. So we had a use case from Skibo, from Münster at that point. They had this nice cluster set up within their university location, so they wanted to use server-to-server sharing. They demonstrated this feature to us. We liked that, and within our community, we had several installations, so we said, let's come together and see whether it's going to work or not. So, and we did that demonstration actually last year, exactly a year ago, at the CS3 workshop in Zurich, where we had 4 different administrative domains. One from Univienna, one from ARNet, Australia, one from CERN, and one from Switch, the Swiss NREN, actually sharing files and folders using the actual protocol implementation coming from OnCloud. Those are all OnCloud domains, right? So after that, we said, all right, success. We have a solution. The only thing is that this is related to one particular product. So let's and maybe we can get back to this mind dump after that. So this was the problem space that we cached at that time at the end of phase 1. I can use this for the panel discussion, or for the discussion after this. So the second phase, we said, all right, so what's the next step? So let's try and make it really vendor neutral, because we want Open Cloud Mesh, right? So let's make it vendor neutral. We started to talk to various vendors, and that was the point in March 16 when we talked to Charles from PGO, and PGO actually implemented also the protocol. So we said, let's try and demonstrate that. So that was actually the point in phase 2 when we started to talk about open cloud mesh. And we had also use case, which we identified as not a strong one, I admit, which was a small test between Arnet and another user, NREN user from Armenia, who were using PDU at that time to try and see whether we can share files and folders. And that's the proof on the right-hand side. You can see the two different branded administrative domains offering shares to each other. And we demonstrated this in the summer 16 at the TNC conference, the group. Probably you recognize the faces there. So that was the second phase. As we said, okay, so we achieved something, right? It's now really it's working between two different products, two different administrative domains, using a mutually agreed protocol. So we captured this in a high level, saying that, you know, what are the basic principles then we should follow, and that should take us to the third step. And we said, of course, we have to sort of formalize this protocol and have a better description based on all these principles that we agreed in the project group. So it should be compliant to best practices, API standard best practices. It should be well described in a format that we all understand. It should be vendor neutral. It should be modular. So when vendors start implementing it, they can pick various modules depending on what they want to do. It should be at least a minimal description of the basic functions that we want. And of course, it should be secure and robust. So we said, okay, so now we have these principles. We have working prototype between two vendors. I forgot to mention at that time, we started to talk to others, and then Nextcloud pop up. So obviously now we had 3 vendors now, PDO, Nextcloud, OwnCloud, who are doing it. And we started the discussion with PowerFolder. You just heard the presentation for PowerFolder, so hopefully they are coming on board. And there is another vendor, ZetaBox, who we are talking to. So the group is growing, the interest is there. So we stepped into the first step, which happened this last summer. Now we said we really need to get out of the box now, because our mind is really sort of determined to do things. So we need a third party, some independent pair of eyes to look into this. So we said, let's try and hire a professional company who will sort of formalize the API for us, which is then really vendor neutral, comes in a nice understandable format and follows all the principles that I showed you in the previous slide. So here came in the picture Appywise, a small Dutch company. You will hear their presentations after me. And actually a couple of partners from the project came together, 8 partners. I have to name them: Arnet, Nextcloud, OwnCloud, Skibo, Univiena, Cessnet, GWDG, and CERN were so kind to offer us some effort, money, resources made available to make this actual formalization, this development work happen. And this is where we are at the moment. So this is called phase 3. And that's the outcome of phase 3, which you can find in GitHub, and also a reference documentation. You will hear about it. And that's probably the first step of phase 3. We also said that, you know, once we have this development work achieved, we should set up kind of reference infrastructure where other vendors can basically test their implementation against. This is still an open question. I'll bring it to the panel to discuss further, because I think that's also an important element of the whole ecosystem. Once we have a formal and open and nicely described API to try and provide also a reference infrastructure where actual deployers, all those vendors who are trying to deploy this, can test against. And not to forget again the use case. So the use case is always important, because we want to do something which is useful to our users, right? And we're not just doing it for the sake of interconnecting things. So I have one use case now, which is a new EC-funded project started January this year. It's led by Jean. I have partners in there like CERN, GWDG, OwnCloud, and others, which is targeting secondary education at the moment. But the actual use case there is that various schools can have their national installations supported by their research network or other institutions in the country. Obviously, they want to pick, they want to hook up with their federation, Access Federation. They want to pick their own backends. So it's all operated as separate domains, but still they want to collaborate under this project, because it's a European project. We pulled together 18 partners from Europe. So those schools, those students, kids, teachers want to collaborate with each other, want to share files, folders, whatever they store related to their project-based learning stuff. So this is the use case now that we are trying to apply, trying to use to sort of promote the Open Cloud Mesh feature and prototype. So this is where we are at the moment, right? So I have a couple of questions and next steps. I'll get back to this after the presentation from Epivise, because the next agenda item is actually Dimitri, who will tell you what those guys got from us as an input. They started to work on it and what they achieved as our sort of API expert partner in this. And we do hope that the results are satisfactory. And then the discussion after this. I don't have a panel. I had no time. As I said, I was quite sick in the last 2 days, so I don't have time to set up a panel here. But we can initiate, I guess, a discussion. I'll give the mic around, and we can have some kind of open discussion around the questions, which goes beyond actually the core functionality, which is sharing and federated sharing and the actual API formalization, towards various other aspects that are around the protocol, not strictly related to the protocol or to the API, but around the protocol that actually helps us to make them usable, because that's the ultimate goal, right? We want this to be used, to be useful, therefore we need all the other things around the actual protocol, which was eventually agreed to go forward. So I'd like to dedicate the panel discussion to that, so you can already think about it, and I'd like to invite Dimitri from Epivise to tell us about the actual protocol implementation. Formalization, sorry, the implementation will be up to those guys who are implementing.